Enough Rope is rated M for a mature audience. It contains coarse language.
Few people can carry off the title legend. My guest tonight is one of them. As a songwriter, he's written the soundtrack to many of our lives. As a composer, he's overtaken Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber with the success of his musicals The Lion King, Aida, and of course Billy Elliot, which is on its way to Australia. The original piano man, his only problem is he'd rather be a guitarist. Elton John, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations on the success of Billy Elliot.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fantastically. It's just been such a great thing to be involved with. I mean, it all started really at the Cannes Film Festival when we saw the film being shown. And I just was so floored by the film. And it had a deep personal effect on me. At the party afterwards, I met Stephen Daldry, the director, and Sally Green, who was our friend who owned the Old Vic Theatre. David was with me, my partner, and we said, this would make a great stage musical, even at that stage.
Has the legend already become exaggerated? Because I read that you were so overwhelmed the first time you saw it that you had to be carried out in a stretcher.
Well, not a stretcher, but I mean, I was sobbing in the cinema. It's a father and son thing, and, you know, every father and son film that I see that, you know, has a relationship thing with a father and son kind of gets to me because of my relationship with my father, which was prickly at best, and which improved towards the latter stages of his life. No, it's just the story, and the story of someone wanting to be successful, coming from a background like that, wanting to do something entirely different that had never been done in the family before, and so I identified with that. And it all started from there, and you know, it just suddenly we were writing Billy Elliot, the musical.
I'm fascinated in the way you write, because as I understand it, you wrote 23 melodies in 23 days. They're sort of poured out of you, is that correct?
I've always been a quick writer like that, whether it's an Elton John album or whether I'm writing for The Lion King or Aida or this. If you're writing a musical, it's much easier than if you're doing an album, say, where you don't know what, you know, what order the songs are going to end up in. It's just a mishmash of songs.
What are you drawing on? I'm curious about what's in your head.
Well, I lived through that period in England when that was all going on, and you draw on the music. I mean, I'm the guy who writes the music. The lyrics were already there. They were very, very honest lyrics. They were about what was going on, and I just drew on folk music, traditional English music, which had been part of my background growing up, and it was very easy because I just wanted to make the melodies, and the poignant melodies, very kind of simple and folk-like and hymn-like.
I know that you're a wide student of all sorts of music. So when a lyric lands in front of you, is it like there's an encyclopedia in your head of different types and styles of music and chords come to you?
Yeah, it's because of 40 years of writing with Bernie Taupin, which it is this year, and I've always written like that. I mean, I've always written to lyrics. I've never really written at all to with the melody first, except with the Scissor Sisters on I Don't Feel Like Dancing and the other track on their album, which was the first time I've ever written in a room with someone else. I'm always alone with the lyric. And you look at the lyric and something happens. It's like when you listen to radio as a child, when you listen to a play on the radio, your imagination suddenly was incredibly, well, what's happening there? And you saw what was happening in your head by hearing it on the radio. And I look at the lyric sheet and I can see what the song's going to be more or less immediately. Not every song, every lyric. Some lyrics are more difficult to write to.
It must be a very beautiful thing. I mean, yes, it's a gift, a beautiful thing to see words and they come out as music. Do you hear music all the time, or do you need a lyric to...
I don't hear music all the time. I need lyrics to suddenly switch, you know, flick the switch on. So the process never gets dull. I've never, ever gotten fed up with writing like this. And it's kind of, you know, it's a non-abusive way of writing because there's no one else in the room. So there's no one you can really argue with. And I'm very fortunate in the fact that I've been writing with Bernie Taupin and Gary Osborne and Lee Hall and Tim Rice and people who, you know, I really love working with, who haven't been argumentative and, you know, have suggested things along the way. But more or less, you know, it's been a collaboration thing. Even though we're not writing together, we're very collaborative. And I love being part of a team. I love it. I'm not a solo kind of guy who wants to do everything on their own. I've always been part of a team, a songwriting team. I like being part of a creative process.
It is a universal story. It's a quest, it's a journey. And it has other touch points for you too, because when you were a kid, you went to the Royal Academy, not unlike Billy.
Yeah.
Going to the Ballet Academy. Yeah. Do you relate strongly to that journey as well?
Yeah, because of the fear involved in it. I mean, there's a smell of fear in those places. For me, even though I didn't live a long way away from it, I didn't have to come down from, you know, the northeast of England. I still had to get on the tube and go to somewhere that was completely unknown to me, and the journey was very similar.
The other thing is, of course, your grandmother was also very supportive of you, wasn't she?
Yeah, I grew up with my grandmother, and in the first few years of my life, I lived in my grandmother's house, and my grandmother was a pivotal point in my life. She was there, always there for me. I think grandparents always are there. You know, if your mum and dad are upset with you, you run to your grandparents because then you know you'll get a little bit of sympathy from them. And my grandmother was so important. I was my granddad when, you know, he died at a very early age. But my grandparents, on both sides of my family, were very important. I think they are to children. They're very loving and very supportive, and as I say, you can get away with murder with them.
Why didn't your dad approve of you?
I'll be honest with you, I think my mum and dad should never have gotten married. They got married after the war, as a lot of people did. They weren't really suited to each other. And they had both married the wrong person. I didn't hate my father, I was afraid of him. Because he was a very strict disciplinarian, and he didn't approve of me doing what I did at all. My mother's got the letters to prove it. You know, I don't want you to be a rock and roller, I don't want you to do this, I want you to work in a bank, be in the Air Force. But that was his upbringing, that's where he was. I mean, I've forgiven. I have no issues about that anymore, but it did shape the way I was, and it made me very determined to be successful at what I was going to do, and made music my life. I just think, as a lot of people, you know, my mum could have married a much more suitable person than my dad could have married him. They just didn't suit each other.
Did you win his approval in the end? Did he actually say to you...
I made my peace with my father in the end.
But you saw this amazing talent, this guy.
Yeah, and you know, he went on to be a great father. He had 4 other children, 4 sons, and you know, he married the right woman and had the, you know, the sons that he wanted and cared about. And, you know, a lot of people make that mistakes with their first child. I've seen it happen so many times. But we made our peace. We still didn't connect. We were still awkward with each other. That awkwardness never goes. I think if you have that gap and you don't know how to sit down and talk, or, you know, we were both awkward in each other's company. But he was very proud of me in the end. And I was chairman of Watford Football Club, so when I went up to Liverpool and watched Liverpool and Watford, or Everton and Watford, he used to come to the games because he lived up there. And we saw each other then. But it was never a cosy situation, because I just think we were too awkward with each other.
Can't see you as a banker, the world's most flamboyant banker. I can't see.
Well, I'm dressed as one today. Yeah.
I've never seen a banker with that jewellery before.
Yeah, thank you.
And there should be more like that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You said before, when you're in a room composing, you're just alone with yourself in the room, which means you're also your critic. Pete Townsend talked about the danger of being successful. He said, look, I could ship bricks and the public would go out and buy them. Right. What's your filter? How do you know what's good? How do you know what's not good?
I think you have to have a reference point. I mean, I play it, if I write a song and I play it to Bernie, who's been around me for 40 years, you know, I can see whether he likes it or not. Sometimes when you write a song, it's so precious to you that if anyone suggests changing it a little bit, you get very upset. You have to get over that. There's some times where you can't see the wood for the trees, and you know, a little change here and there that's suggested actually works. So I'm not precious about being, you know, I'm a little bit precious when I start, you know, it's like when you play something and you think, it's fabulous, isn't it? And they go, well, actually, maybe that bit there could change, and you think, But you have to get over that because you're too close to it. So there are some times when you know it can't be changed because it's perfect, but you know sometimes that, you know, you have to put it out to the forum and say, what do you think? And you have to accept that.
You say you write very quickly. Have you actually had moments of epiphany, you know, where you sometimes hear about, where a song is just fully formed, just bang, there it is?
Oh, absolutely.
I hate you.
Yeah.
I would so love to be able to do that.
No, I mean, it's not a... It's just the way it happens with me with lyrics. It's just... I don't know. I mean, it sparks a melody in me. It switched the musical switch on in me, and that's what I do really well.
Does it ever frustrate that you can't write those lyrics for yourself? That
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit Moon in June, and it's a good... People have heard my lyrics and say, good job you don't write your own song. And there are some lyrics I haven't been able to write to. I mean, I don't write... Not everything or anyone gives me, I can write to. So when you actually get a lyric and you say, God, this is fantastic, like your song was written in 20 minutes, I would say tops. Those, and Daniel, the same. Candle in the Wind, the same. Those sort of songs don't come along very often.
you refer to yourself as the Pete Townsend of piano. I mean, and I get this strong sense that you're frustrated with the piano as an instrument, even though it's...
Who wouldn't be? I mean, it's, you know, it's a 9-foot plank. I mean, you can't hit it, you can't kick it. You can, but you'd end up with an injury. I mean, that's why I used to stand on it, I used to lie under it. I used to decorate the piano so it didn't look like a piano. You're stuck there like a lump. I mean, other rock and rollers, with the guitar you can move around across the stage, you can communicate. I'm stuck in one position all the time. The piano is you can't move it, and that's for one or two tours I played an electric piano, so I faced the audience front, and I'm always like this. I've got a bad neck because I'm always looking like that. And for a while I just played an electric piano, but it's not the same as playing a grand piano. It's, you know, it's a fantastic instrument, but you are stationary. You know, you can't fly through the air with the piano, it's too heavy. But, you know, I've always envied Jimi Hendrix and Pete Townsend and Keith Richards. Guitarists have that great ability to develop, you know, they can move anywhere they want. They can talk to the lead vocalist, they just walk over to the lead vocalist, have a chat. And they can, you know, on a bad night, they can really get frustrated and smash their guitar. I tried to push my piano off the stage once and succeeded. And the Ryvita keyboard, which I used to play, I call it the Ryvita keyboard, I did chuck into the audience once as well. Because there are nights when you're so pissed off because you're not having a good night. Not that the audience might know, but you're not having a good night, and it happens. You just, what can you do with the piano?
Did you never consider doing a Jimi Hendrix and setting fire to it as you played it?
Not really, no. I think the insurance, it's just a fire hazard. No,
Spectacular.
there's nothing you can do. You could take an axe to it, maybe, but,
yeah.
You know, even so, those pianos, it would be terrible to do that to a piano because they are such beautiful instruments.
You've made a quid out of what you do. It just seems to me that if anyone's in a position to have a piano invented that can also be used as some kind of a rock instrument, it's you.
Don't think we haven't thought about it and tried, but, you know, if you want the sound to come out, I mean, you can always... You know, I think some people I know have a grand piano there and play. There's nothing inside. It's just an electric keyboard. They do it, but it's not the same sound. No. You have to have a grand piano to get the sound you want. So listen, I'm not complaining. It's not done me any harm. It's just there are some. You do envy people sometimes. You envy people who can run around the stage sing, and I get really awkward when I stand up and sing it if I'm doing a charity thing or something. Like, what do? I'm usually sitting safe behind. I'm very pleased I'm there now. Yes. Because you know, being 60 years of age, it's nice to be able to hide behind the piano, because you know, you look at certain people of my age who are still jumping up and down and. In the tight leopard skins and stuff like that, and you think, I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore, or I'm glad, you know, I've envied you for so long, I don't envy you anymore. Because it's a hard thing to do. Yeah. I mean, A, you have to stay in shape, and B, it's kind of not dignified, but it's all right behind the piano.
Think how much of Mick Jagger's life is spent exercising.
Oh, I'm not talking about Mick, because Mick is an exception to the rule. He gets older and older and fitter, and is as good as ever.
It's a deal with the devil. Yeah. It's just occurred to me, actually, that, as you said, you played piano, you must... I've only been able to relate to people like this, even in conversation.
I know, it's like, hello, I just wonder I don't walk around like this, really. It's like the Elephant Man. I mean, it's, hello, good evening. I do have, you know, troubles. I can't sleep on my left side. I have to sleep on my right side.
You must have a whole team of chiropractors.
No, I don't. I do have a great masseur in Las Vegas who works on all the dancers when he's working with Celine Dion. Yeah. And he's great. He can crack my neck, and you know, so I love going to Vegas and he can work on me. But no, I'm afraid it's like, I've got that disease.
You mentioned before having a bad night on stage. What's that like?
Horrible, because you want every night to be good. But the
What's a
thing
bad
about
night?
being a live performer is that nothing's ever the same. So that's why I love live performing. You can go on some nights and think you're going to be fantastic, and it's just okay. And some nights you're feeling not great, you're tired, you've got a headache, and you're brilliant. You just sit there some nights, and then the piano just, everything you do is great.
I was talking to Jim Carrey a couple of years ago, who described coming on stage with you at Los Angeles.
And doing Rocket Man.
That's right, and he said, I walked on stage and you announced him, and the whole place went off, and he said, the hairs stood up on the back of my neck, and he said, now I know why all these rock stars are head cases.
Right. And he's not.
No, absolutely. No, he was quite rational.
I love Jim. He's fantastic. But if you're a film actor, you never get that instant gratification. That's why a lot of actors now want to come to the theatre, want to do the theatre, because they do films and then they never go and sit through it. It's absolutely, why would you want to sit through something you've done 6 months or a year ago, and you're just sitting there going, oh my God, are they liking it, are they liking it? Because an audience doesn't really clap at a film. But in a theatre, an actor can go and get his rocks off, basically, because he can get the instant gratification. He can get that, and that's what I love, the feedback from the audience, the human contact you get. And for a movie actor, that's hard. That's why a lot of them are complete and utter fruitcakes, because they are just, they don't get that. They're an incredible artistic art form, which I love. I mean, I love cinema. I love watching films. But it must be strange.
Do you get that sense of thrill that Jim Carrey described? I mean, obviously it was new to him, but do you still get the hair stand up?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I just did a 60th birthday concert at Madison Square Garden, which I chose 2 years before because I'd done 59 shows there, and I wanted to do my 60th at the venue that I love the most. I mean, the Sydney Entertainment Centre is pretty amazing. I've done 40 there. But Madison Square Garden is an amazing place to play. I thought, I've done so many shows here, let's do my 60th on my 60th. So we did that, and we rehearsed a different set list. We did a lot more obscure numbers. We hired a choir. We had a cello player. We rehearsed a much longer show. It's the longest show I've ever done, 3 hours, 25 minutes. And it worked from the word go. And so all very well say, I'm going to do this, but then you've got to pull it off. And thank God it worked well. And the audience it was electric. And yeah, I had goosebumps. You have to have the fear of performing. You have to have the fear of doing a new set list and whatever. I don't really get nervous before I get on stage because I know what I'm going to do. But I get the fear of, are they going to like it? Yeah, and if you lose the fear in anything you do, then you might as well do something else. The fear of writing Billy Elliot, is it going to be successful? I want this to be so successful. We've got the right team of people. But I think I wrote probably the best music I've ever done for a musical called Lestat, which came out on Broadway last year and got absolutely butchered and closed within 3 months, and was a very upsetting process. But at the end of the day, basically, it's Elton John's show flops. It's not anybody else's show flops. It's my bloody show that flops. It was just one of those things. It didn't work. Not everything works. You have to accept that.
I'd like to talk about 3 people who absolutely, intimately understand what you've just described, and 3 different moments in your life, which is an earlier Madison Square Garden concert in '74 with John Lennon, his last public appearance. I noticed in your latest album, The Captain and the Kid, there's the lyric, I miss John Lennon's laugh.
Yeah.
What do you remember of that night?
Well, talking of hair standing on the back of your neck, I've never, ever heard applause for anyone in my life like that. Never. I mean, to this day, the ovation that he got and the love that he got from the audience when he walked on stage, and he was, physically sick before he went on because he hadn't done a show since the Toronto Peace concert, so he was out of the loop as far as playing live went, and he was terrified of playing in front of an audience. It was astonishing. I mean, I think it seemed like 10 minutes, the ovation. It probably was less than that, but it seemed to go on and on and on, and it just loosened him up, and it made him very, very happy. It was a turning point in his life. It was the night he reconnected with Yoko Ono. It's the reason that I'm Sean's godfather, because of my friendship with John, and then that night was such neat. We all went on to the Pierre Hotel afterwards, and Uri Geller was there bending spoons, and it was just a magical night. And it was one that I think reaffirmed for him, because of all the crap that he was going through with the government and the FBI and stuff, that people in New York, which he'd chosen to be his home, absolutely loved him. And then, of course, I was in Australia when I found out that he was been murdered. We were on a plane going from Brisbane to Melbourne, and everyone was allowed to leave the plane except for the Elton John group. And I thought, oh God, something bad has happened. I thought maybe my grandmother had died, because, you know, she was an older lady that lived at my house, and I thought every time I'm going away, is this the last time I'm going to see her? And I thought that might be it. I knew someone had died, something had happened. But I wasn't expecting that, and nobody was expecting that. And, you know, very, very tragic moment for me in my life, having gotten to know. I mean, after the year or so I spent with John on and off and becoming friends, when he reconnected with Yoko, I didn't really see much more of him because he was happy. He was like, his life was back together again. He wasn't the raving drug addict that, you know, we took a lot of drugs together, we misbehaved together. He'd find solace again. And I think with Sean, when I talked about people making mistakes with their first kid, I don't think he was the best father in the world to Julian. I don't think he wanted to make that mistake again with Sean.
He was special to you, though, too. I remember he said something to you, for Christ's sake, take those glasses off and face the world. He pushed you, didn't he?
Yes, and he was very honest. He was very blunt. I mean, what you got with John was the truth. I mean, that Liverpudlian great way of cutting through everything. I mean, it's a very British thing, and he never lost that British thing, even though he was living in America. It's like, what are you hiding behind? What are you doing that? You know, why are you, doing this? Why? Just take him off. And, you know, I'll tell you what he was like. He would take my parents at the airport. He went with my parents to the airport. You know, he took when the band went to the airport, he went and said goodbye to them. We went out with my parents to a restaurant. He was just, you know, I was very wary of meeting John Lennon because I'd heard all the, the vicious tongue, which was still there. And, I've got a vicious tongue as well, but, we use it hopefully in an ironic way and a caustic way sometimes. But I never saw that side of him.
The second one was dancing the Charleston with Princess Di. How do you come to be dancing the Charleston?
I think it was Prince Andrew's 21st birthday. And she was there at Windsor Castle. I was playing with Ray Cooper. And it was terrifying because we came on stage and there was these like 10 gold chairs that were empty, and we knew who they were there for. And you can't play something like that thinking, is it too loud? Are they going to like this? Are they going to blah, blah, blah? And I played before the royal family before, but it was still a terrifying experience. But I came down after the show, and I got dressed and changed, and I came down, and she was all alone in this empty kind of ballroom. And we chatted, and we talked about the wedding that was coming up and all that bit. And then we went into the next room where the dance band was, and we did the Charleston. Never done the Charleston before in my life. Not very good at that, I have to say, but you don't refuse someone like Princess Diana, or she wasn't Princess Diana at that point. And she says, do you want to dance? It was an amazing evening. It was. Then I danced with the Queen to Rock Around the Clock.
Is she a good dancer?
She shifts around. She's pretty good. She shifts around with a handbag on her arm. And no, actually, it was Princess Anne who asked me to dance, and then the Queen said, "Can we join you?" As if she's going to say, "No, you can't." And that was one of the most surreal moments of my life, dancing at Windsor Castle to Rock Around the Clock with the Queen. Doesn't get much more surreal than that.
I know you and Princess Di went through a very close time and an estrangement and a close time again. The anniversary of her, her birthdays came up, the anniversary of her death, 10th anniversary soon.
Right.
Will you be singing Goodbye English Rose? You said you'll only sing that at the request of the princes. Is that something you
I specifically would not like to sing it.
No.
And I've got that message to Prince William and Prince Harry, because I think you cannot recreate the past.
Loveliness we've lost, those empty days without your smile, this torch we'll always carry for our nation's golden child.
They wanted to put on a concert of remembrance, but a joyous concert. And I honestly think if I sang that, it would bring the whole atmosphere down. It would recreate something that's sad, and this is supposed to be a day remembering the joyous things about her life. And I really don't think, after singing it once, that you can sing it again. I don't want to sing a song about her dying. I want to sing something joyous and uplifting and up-tempo, because I think people want to hear that again. I think that was a special moment in time, and it should stay like that.
What would you rather sing?
I think we're going to sing Are You Ready for Love, Burn Down a Mission, and 3 up-tempo songs. I think I'm going to sing your song as the opening song of the show for the princes, which is a nice song to sing about their mother.
Yeah. And
then end the show with getting a choir, and we'll just end with 3 fast numbers and end it on a high note and a joyous note. I just think it's just too somber to do that.
The third meeting I'd like to ask you about is the one with Elvis Presley in Maryland, and I think it was a year before he died, or close to then.
Yeah.
He was a man that's the first rock and roll record you heard, turned your musical life on its head.
Yeah.
But that was not really the man you met, was it?
No, I mean, Elvis Presley changed everyone's life. I mean, there would be no Beatles, there would be no Hendrix, there would be no Dylan. I mean, he just was the man that changed music, without question. When they had a Rolling Stone poll, he was the most influential people in rock and roll. I think the Beatles were #1. And I just said, you know what? No, Elvis was #1. Without Elvis, groups would never have picked up guitars. I know he was influenced and drew his influence from gospel and blues and country music and black soul music, whatever. But he was the king, and he was the one that started it all. And so when I first saw him, I was a little boy in a barber shop in Pinner Green. And I looked at an old Life magazine, and there was a picture of him, and I thought it was from Mars or something. And then that weekend, my mum came home with Heartbreak Hotel, and that changed my life. I saw him in Las Vegas when he was fantastic at the Hilton, but the only time I ever met him was very briefly before he went on stage in Washington, D.C., a year before he died, and it was very sad. And but even though it was very sad, even on stage, my mum was with me. My mum said, well, he's not going to be alive much longer, is he? It was typical. But she was sad. She was really sad, because I mean, that was her idol, and my idol. And but even though he went through the motions and was not really there at the scene at the end of that concert, there were still flashes of brilliance, even though he was hugely overweight, and just mostly, when he actually sung a couple of lines, it was magical. You don't lose that magic, no matter how fucked up you are. You know, if you're brilliant, snatches of that brilliance will come through.
Did you see him as a measure of what you didn't want to become?
Well, at that time, I wasn't going to be like that. But then, of course, I did go through the drug stages and end up a recluse in my own bedroom, you know, taking cocaine. So I kind of did become him, but in a way, I became a drug addict, and he was a drug addict. But the thing was, I still lived in England. If I'd have lived in England or Australia, the press wouldn't let me get away with it, you know, because they're very, very vitriolic, and they're very, very bitchy and they're nasty. But having said that, I would rather live in a country that shot me down in flames for misbehaving than stay in a country where they revere anyone, no matter what they're doing, i.e. Michael Jackson and all that lot. So what happened to him, and you forget he died when he was only 42, for Christ's sake, when he died. I mean, he was only 42.
I had forgotten that, actually. That's amazing how you say that.
He was only 42, but he looked 62.
Yeah.
And it's one of the great tragedies. He was surrounded by a manager who just closeted him and ripped him off, basically. He never had enough people around him. I mean, I had people around me to tell me that I was being an idiot, and so I knew I was being an idiot. But I don't think anybody actually could say, Elvis, you can't do that, you mustn't do that.
I think a difference between you and he, too, is he did become entirely reclusive, whereas you led... My memory
I've always
of you
been
a very flamboyant.
Yeah, I've been chairman of a football club. I've had I'm always, you know, if I come to Australia, I'm always out on the harbour. I'm always in, you know, in the galleries or whatever. I mean, you know, going out to eat, going to see Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I'm not a recluse. I have to say, as I get older, you know, I've been through all the openings and nightclubs. I don't want to be there. I'm not a paparazzi opening of a thing. I don't like going. I'll go to a film premiere or a theatre thing if I'm involved in it, or a friend is doing something, or a charity that a friend of mine is supporting or promoting. I'll do it. But I do it with gritted teeth, because I know I've had that in my life. I prefer privacy. I don't like being followed around the streets by paparazzi. I hate it.
During that period when you were doing a lot of drugs, doing a lot of alcohol, and leading a very big life...
See, I still worked when I was doing those things. That was a secret.
Absolutely.
That was a secret. If I'd been home just doing it, I would have been dead by now, without question. But I still worked. I still made records. I still was creative, and that saved me. And that process never, even though I was doing drugs and, you know, didn't feel like it half the time, I still did it because I wanted to. You know, I loved it. I still love performing. Even though I, you know, performed sometimes when I shouldn't have been. I was on drugs, and I vowed that would never happen, but it did happen. But I still performed, and I still made records, and that saved my life.
I remember the outrageous showmanship of that period.
Yeah.
I remember the Donald Duck outfit, which I...
Well, that was just a bit before that. The actual, I tell you, the height of it was the showmanship was probably the tour I did with the orchestra when I came on beforehand. And, you know, the outfits were out just beyond belief. I mean, punk hairdos and punk wig, yellow, pink hair. That was, you know, soon after that was, you know, that was a pretty low time, even though the orchestral shows were fantastic in Australia. That wasn't a good time for me. But the Donald Duck period, it was, you know, yeah, that was just, I wasn't thinking about things then. See, everything was done on instinct, and the costumes and everything, but, you know, you can tell it was done on instinct because I didn't try the outfit out, because when I put the bloody outfit on backstage, I put my arm through the leg hole, the leg through the armhole, and then when I actually sat down at the piano, the bum of the duck was so big I couldn't play the piano. So it was totally and utterly done by instinct.
See, I'd always wondered if that Donald Duck outfit was a Disney tribute or a cry for help, but now I realise it was... It was Bob Mackie who made my clothes, but said, well, what about being Donald Duck? I went, fabulous. And then, of course, the next tour I did, I was Minnie Mouse. I first met Sting dressed as Minnie Mouse backstage at the Forum. I'll never forget it, nor will he. What did he say?
I mean, Donald Duck was fine, but then you say Minnie Mouse, then that was too far, with the tail and everything. I was so embarrassed.
You drew the line at Goofy?
No, Minnie was better. Minnie was better, but, you know, then you had the tail and the shoes. It's, no, forget it. After Donald Duck was the last kind of... We just didn't think about it.
You described getting sober as one of your greatest achievements, and a hard thing to do. It's easy to be addicted, hard not to be. What changes when you sober up?
Well, I'll say, when I got sober, I put a lot of work into it. You don't just get sober by taking it lightheartedly. I mean, I really was at the end of my tether, and so I really needed to wise up, and I went away for 6 weeks to a hospital in Chicago, which wasn't a fancy treatment center. I'm not a great believer that... I'm a great believer in boot camps. I'm not a great believer in, you know, I read about Malibu places with televisions and swimming pools. I'm sorry, I don't get it. You know, you're going there because you have a severe problem. When you have a severe problem like I had, you didn't know how to live a life properly. You had to start learning how to live properly again. I didn't know anything. Everyone did everything for me. And with drug addiction, you become self-centered, you become delusional. And I went to a very strict place, and I'm glad I did. And then I took a year off when I came out, took a year off in England. I had great aftercare. I did what I was told, sometimes kicking and screaming, but I did what I was told, because my way obviously hadn't worked. And I put a lot of effort into it. And for 3 years, I was relentless in doing what I was told, and, you know, going to psychiatrist in Atlanta to find out why I drank in the first place. What was the reason I wanted to hide and run away? You know, there must be a reason why you did that. And I did a lot of work on myself. And, you know...
Did you find the reason?
Yeah, I found reasons. I went to a woman psychiatrist who was brilliant, pointed out things to me that were so clear that I'd never even thought of before. You know, things like, for example, she said, you don't blame your father anymore, you don't hate your father, you've done that in treatment, you know, you don't hate that, that's in the past. You hate being Elton John because you can't say no to anybody. And your career is all-encompassing, and there's no time for you. It's all Elton all the time. And I went, oh, God. I thought, God, she's right about that. So what I've done since 1990 is learn how to function as a human being, putting a lot of work into it, loving every minute of it. I didn't really have any bad times. I mean, there are times, obviously, when you have blue days and everything, but, you know, you realise that everyone has blue days, just get over it, you know. And I've really enjoyed every single minute of my sobriety, as far as I've come a long way. I've now had to have a relationship with someone. I now have a loving relationship with someone. It took me 43 years to find out how. If you had not been sober, if you'd not been cleaned up when you met David, who's now your partner... Well, it would never work. Would you have seen him for what he is? No, I took hostages in my relationship. I didn't know how to have a relationship. It was all about, you have to, because I'm Elton, you have to fit in with my lifestyle, not about I have to fit in with your lifestyle. When I met David, I realised He had a job, he had a very good job, his own flat, his own car. It was a different kettle of fish. He was like grown up, and if I was wanting to be in this relationship, which I did, I was going to have to be grown up and realise that there's two in this relationship, not Elton.
Did he make that clear to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I mean, by that time, I realised it anyway. That was because I'd done a lot of work on myself, and I was starting to grow up. But I mean, when you get to the age of 43 and you can't work a washing machine, I wasn't ashamed of being a drug addict. But I was ashamed to ask someone, I can't work a washing machine. I couldn't do anything for myself. And that is a really pretty bad state of affairs. I came back to England. I lived on my own. The first time I'd ever lived on my own, ever. Since I was a child, since I became Elton John, I'd always had someone, a flatmate or a family member or a staff member living with me. I didn't. I got a dog from the Battersea Dogs home, Thomas, and we got up at 6:30 every morning and I took him for a walk around the square, and I enjoyed how to be on my own. I'd gotten so far out of being not normal that I wanted to have a certain bit of normality to actually function like people can actually fend for yourself. I mean, that's disgraceful.
And with so many clothes, you had to be able to work a washing machine.
Exactly.
Could have been a disaster.
Exactly.
You mentioned before that you still have blue days, and you have a history of, there are a couple of suicide attempts, there was some dark times at different times in your life. Do you like yourself more now?
Absolutely. But I still have blue days. I still have, image problems. I don't think that ever goes away. I've always had, the way I look, the way, I do have blue days, but then very few and far between, and I know how to cope with them so much better. I have a person to help me cope with them, and I don't run away and lock the door anymore. I used to run away into the bedroom and lock the door. Do I like myself more? Absolutely. I'm very proud of what I've achieved since I've become sober. With the stuff I've done to reappease for the sins that I committed when I was doing a lot of drugs, and the waste of money and the waste of time and the waste of energy. I mean, yeah, there were fun times, but, there were also really dismal times, and, an exorbitant amount of money was spent on rubbish, and, putting up my nose and hanging around with the wrong people. And since I've done that, and we live in an age of AIDS, and being a homosexual guy, not being infected by AIDS or HIV was a big, was a big thing for me, thinking, well, I've been through all this, I've come out of this, I've got to do something to make up for what I've done. It's not guilt, it's just human decency. I have no guilt over what I did. I have regrets, but I have no guilt. But I have an endless ambition to do something really positive every day of the week, if possible.
It's interesting how you wrote an article for the New Statesman earlier this year about gay prejudice in different parts of the world, and I noted that when you performed in Poland, were quite a right-wing
I said something in
Poland. You said
yeah.
something on stage, and the administration's actually attempted to shut down homosexuality in any public sense.
Yeah.
That seems an uncharacteristically political thing for you to do on stage. What was that like for you?
I'm at a point in my life where I have to make a stand. I mean, this was going on in Poland, and I said it in front of a televised audience. I said, listen, I'm a gay man, I've come here, you've applauded me, you have to be more tolerant. Well, we're not the enemy. If we're living in the 21st century and people are still worried about homosexuality being evil, when the Catholic Church has covered up child molestation for the last 25 years and done nothing about it, then we live in a funny society. I don't get it. And the older I get, I just don't get what's going on in the world. The anger towards people that don't deserve anger when there's not enough focus on people like Robert Mugabe who deserve to be gotten out of the way and gotten rid of. It's just, we live in a crazy world. I become very disillusioned by it, but I have to speak out, I have to speak my mind, because as a gay man now, I have a responsibility to do that. I sat back too long. I mean, when ACT UP were going and trying to change the face of AIDS awareness in America because nobody else was doing it, I sat back and did nothing.
And why was that? You just didn't know how to be committed, or you were self-involved?
I don't know why I didn't do anything. I look back and question myself, well, why didn't you do something more positive then? I mean, I did the odd record. Friends of mine were dying right, left and centre of AIDS, and the government in America was doing nothing with AIDS. We live in a fantastic world, which has somehow become so hateful and so divisive, and it's all fueled by religion. And that makes me very sad because, I'm not an irreligious person, and I do have my beliefs, and the older I get, the more that I see a need for love and tolerance and forgiveness and let's get on with each other. No more so than... we need peace more than our time now than we ever needed it.
It's good to see you so passionate, though, because it's very easy, certainly with your level of success, but also as you get older, to go, it's someone else's problem.
You can't. No, I mean, it's very hard for me to bite my tongue now. And I'm not, I know I said in an interview with Jake Shears from the Scissor Sisters, I think religion should be banned. I didn't really, what I meant to say, what I really said was like, I think religious leaders need to take a good look at themselves and take the stand that they're taking. In this day and age, in the 21st century, for Christ's sake, this is not the Middle Ages. Being hateful towards gay people is evil. You know, I'm afraid this has come basically from the religious right in America, who say, you know, that, you know, homosexuality is something that can be, can be altered and can be dealt with, and you can be cured. And it's like, I'm very happy being who I am. I'm a good person. I love being who I am. I just happen to be gay. I'm a very good person. I give back. I've made mistakes. I love other people. I want the world to be a positive place. Stop hating me. Stop hating me. Stop treating me like some fucking thing from Mars. I'm not. I'm a human being. I do better things in my life than you do. And all you can do is be hateful, hateful, hateful. I'm sick of it.
Last question. Billy Elliot's coming to Australia, and you're going to come over as well a bit later. I assume you're going to go and see it, and I understand that pretty much every time you see it, you still shed a tear. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. You can't fail to be moved. It's human. It's human. And then, you know, that's the thing about the show. I'm so looking forward to coming. I'm going to be doing some solo shows in Australia to coincide, especially with the opening of Billy. And I know it's going to be good in Australia, because I think the Australians have the same ethics that we British have. They have the same sense of humour. They're very honest, abrasive people. And I think it'll do really well. I hope so, anyway.
So we can look forward to seeing you as a big gooey lump somewhere on the side of the stage.
Yeah, well, a big lump anyway.
Elton John, thanks very much.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure.
On Wednesday, test your memory, shout at the TV, sing along and have a laugh when we join Adam Hills and the teams for our favourite music trivia game, Spicks and Specs, 8:30 Wednesday night on ABC.